Alright, welcome everybody.
Yes.
We've decided that the title of today's stream is Anything Goes, No Taboo Topics. So this is the part where we talk about anything and everything that comes to mind.
Yes. ADD stream of consciousness.
Oh yeah. Did you know that
So-
Miss America isn't going to be doing a swimsuit contest anymore?
Well, I just saw that, and that is...
I just saw that too.
That is interesting. You think okay, so as I understood it, Miss America was almost basically just a pageant where you judge people based on how attractive they are. And that's like all those pageants are based on physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting, so what's interesting to me about this is, so they say they're taking out the swimsuit portion and they're not judging by physical appearance because they want to be progressive in some sense and not judge a book by its cover. But the thing is, they still have all the contestants are still at least mostly picked by their looks. If you wanted your Miss America to be someone else, you'd probably look in an academic setting and try to find. You'd probably try to find like youth leaders and young people who are doing researching things that like coming up with potential cures for cancer. The kids who are going to like Ivy League schools and stuff. You'd think they would be contestants, but no, it's still a looks-based contest. Like these,
It's still pretty girls, but we pretend not to objectify them anymore.
Right. It's a great, it's this nice guys that seems to, and I don't know who that's gonna fool necessarily. They're still being objectively judged by their looks, just less. It's like this weird limbo. It's kind of like if you're gonna come up with an idea and you're going to like, okay, we're not gonna do this, like a more drastic change than okay, we're just not gonna do the swimsuit thing anymore. Like it's so half-hearted. I don't know.
Yeah, and then here the article it says. The organization is also getting rid of the evening gown portion of the competition and instead asking contestants to wear attire that makes them feel confident, expresses their personal style, and shows how they hope to advance the role of Miss America.
Man, those outfits have got to be...
They got to make you confident.
They're apparently really impressive outfits that will literally advance, like... So,
What in the world? What in the freaking world is the role of Miss America?
I thought it was to sit there and look pretty.
So you get a bunch of people that don't care about looking pretty to sit there and not look pretty in order to advance the role of Miss. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Okay, this says, who doesn't want to be empowered, earn leadership skills, and pay for college, and be able to show the world who you are as a person from the inside of your soul?
Well, I mean, I want to do that. Can I be Miss America?
Yeah, soon it'll be gender inclusive too, because it's just too derogatory and too exclusive, isn't it?
I wonder when our next Miss America has a beard.
Oh my god!
What year will that be?
Oh gosh, probably at the rate we're going, 2020. There you go.
2020, first Miss America with a beard.
Okay.
So Caitlyn Jenner will be Miss America. Got it.
Yes. Wasn't she already named Woman of the Year something by?
Yeah, something like that.
Man, the Kardashians have a monopoly on the news. the Jenners, that group of people, they have a monopoly on the public eye, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I mean, people want to talk about stupid things. They heaven forbid we talk about something that actually matters.
Right. That would be way too boring. Not cool. Let's see.
Well, you know how we were talking about that, or you brought up the or one of us brought up the whole Supreme Court deciding on the issue in Colorado with the baker and the gay wedding cake thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. Everybody seems to think that the Supreme Court sided on the side of the baker, but they didn't.
I didn't actually look into it. Can you elaborate more on that?
Okay, so basically, what the Supreme Court says in terms of what they effectually said, is that doing that in that particular case may or may not have been called for, but the only reason that they were going to side on and not require them to pay up is because the Colorado court was essentially engaging in religious discrimination by the way they portrayed the people. It had nothing to do with actually... Hi, Maria girl. We're streaming right now. Oh, hi there, pretty girl. See, we can have a pretty girl come on stream. Hi there.
Do you want to be the next Miss America?
Oh, help. Oh, help.
No.
Oh, pretty girl, you can go and be a pretty girl all by yourself and not worry about what anybody else says or does. But Daddy's going to give you over to Mommy right now because we're streaming. Sound good? So anyhow, the Supreme Court ruled that basically the lower court wasn't behaving appropriately toward the Christian baker that refused to bake the cake.
Right.
And well, at least from my understanding of the situation, I think that people should be able to give or refuse service to whomever they wish for whatever reason they wish, and then as long as they have to, personally deal with the consequences. If it means that if their business decreases by 90%. Yeah.
I think
that was not just one sec. That was not the basis upon which the Supreme Court made their ruling. The Supreme Court basically said, "Oh yeah, sure, we can go and make these sorts of rulings all the time. That we can go and arbitrarily decide who's allowed to conduct business with whom and on what terms, as opposed to leaving it to the people to be able to decide those things." So, even though the result was favorable for the baker, it didn't set any precedent of any kind for the Supreme Court actually being pro-freedom of association and freedom of speech. So the Supreme Court actually, in a 7-2 verdict, essentially said, we do not stand behind the freedom of speech or the freedom of religion, even though we're somehow going to finagle this whole thing in a certain ways to come out on the side of the person that actually did have something wrong happen to them.
Right. And it just it kind of reminds me of the Miss America thing. You kind of have this standard, and it's like you're going halfway but not all the way. Like the decisions are just kind of like in limbo and kind of not super it's not super coherent, and it's not cohesive with what's what's going on essentially. And decisions like that are often just a little bit disheartening, kind of half-hearted, and you're like, why? What does this accomplish? What does this bring with it? And this just fits right in to maintaining appearance and stuff like that seems to be more important than maintaining consistency. And so, and I guess that makes sense from a social point of view, because people see what they see and they don't necessarily understand what they understand. So, they understand what they understand, but they don't necessarily detect what's what, like, maybe they just don't pick up on consistency, but they can pick up on appearance. It's much easier to see. So by facilitating an appearance, you essentially get more done. While but not really. But in a social sense, you do get more done, which is sad. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, the real my real question about this at the core is ultimately who has the right to make decisions on my behalf?
Right.
And under what circumstances? Because I want to be autonomous. And I thought that, at least to a great extent, the preservation of human rights is the point of the U.S. Constitution.
Right.
So if someone is supposed to preserve and uphold the Constitution of the United States, and they consistently come up with rulings that are anti-first principles, but can still be somehow finagled through mental gymnastics into fitting within a particular framework.
Yep.
I'd say those people are doing the entire American people an injustice, and that's notwithstanding that's not even considering whether or not someone should be denying service to X or Y person, because that's not the point.
Not the point, no. Yeah, no, exactly. And the thing is, if you're denying service to a group of people, you're losing out on business, and like they will be suffering those consequences. In fact, you know, they'll probably get a reputation as well, and that's going to follow them anyway. Like it's not going to be good. Like, you know, so anyway, so like it's almost a self-correcting thing. So if things that are self-correcting should be left kind of, you know, are not self-correcting necessarily, but like the concept, like they're not getting by unscathed by doing this. So if they already are naturally accruing consequences, I think systems like that should be kind of left untouched, because you know, why mess with something that's already, you know, naturally, you know, spawning an outcome in accordance to what was going on. And yeah, so I mean, that's my take on that thing. On that, like, if they're not breaking laws, if they're, you know, if they're basically first principles for their rights, if they're just upholding those, yeah, well, you know, if you deny service to a specific group of people that's substantial, you're gonna lose out on business no matter. Like, they're already getting their contracts, and the reputation that comes with that. So
yeah, you're gonna be shooting yourself in the foot.
Exactly. So I mean, I think you could leave that untouched, and it would kind of sort itself out. And in fact, when people, I mean, that's kind of the premise behind like Yelp or something, right? Like, you have restaurants or something, and if you have a good restaurant, you know, you get good reviews and stuff happen, and the word spreads. And there's this saying, right, that like one bad review is worse than 10 good ones. Like, people don't know it. People expect good things when they go to a restaurant, you know. So when one person puts a bad review, it really it like displaces a ton of like good people. So
because people will immediately, they'll go and read the 1-star review.
Yep. Exactly.
And they will capture the visual story of how someone didn't do what they should have been doing, etc.
And these sites are built around kind of it's almost self-correcting. Yeah, reputation, right? And you build a reputation. What matters. And you should be free to build your own reputation in the way bad or good. You should be free to do that, as long as you're not, you know, hurting people, you know, something like that. I think.
Like if Muslims want to refuse service to Christians, then let them do that.
Let them do it.
If Christians want to refuse service or a particular service to gay people, or some Christians want to do that, then let them do it. If Hare Krishnas want to refuse service to, I don't know.
Heck, if gay people want to refuse service to straight people, that's fine too. Like, it's, you know,
I mean, like, let's say someone wanted to have a gay camp. If someone wanted to have a gay camp where no straight people were invited, I mean, should the straight people get up in arms about it? What if the straight people want to have a straight camp where no gay people are invited?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Not my problem. None of my business.
Yeah, and exactly. None of my business or my problem. Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I used to be kind of moderate to left, but I'm more like just libertarian now. And so this definitely fits, like what we've been saying definitely fits in with my like view of how politics should be done. Because I think like systems that self-correct are generally optimal, because obviously it takes less input and from outside sources, like takes less energy, and I think when you, and I mean, if you look back, like for example, you know, I took microeconomics recently, and you'll see like when the government intervenes with things, it really messes up how economics is, like the signals that prices send and stuff like that. When there's outside intervention, it actually messes it up, and it's like some government intervention in an economic setting will like kind of like throw things out of balance, kind of, and will like screw up the self-correcting system.
What do you mean by price signaling? I know what you mean, but for the sake of somebody that might not have studied economics,
okay,
how does price send a signal? What exactly?
Right.
What goes into that whole
circumstance?
So
when something has a higher price, and especially changes in price. So when you see something raising in price, that indicates to buyers and to sellers that this thing is increasing in value to people. So more people will start producing that thing, and more people will be buying it, and so prices and changes in prices basically send the signal of, okay, so how is this valued? Like how many, basically, yeah, that's basically it. Is how is this valued, and what will people be wanting this, etc. And changes in prices, that's kind of like, I'm pretty ignorant of most of this because I've only had an intro course, but it's like, when you see, it's the same premise behind like the stock market, right? When you see stocks going up and down, it gives hints at what's going on in the real world. It's kind of like an effect, right? Mm-hmm. But when there's government intervention and like say for like higher ed, they're getting subsidized by the government, it sort of like screws up. It's not like organic.
It sort of screws up what? You broke up there for a moment.
Oh. It screws up what those signals would be, it screws up basically the accuracy of those signals, because, you're getting outside input and almost like noise in the signals, if you're going with that kind of analogy. And it doesn't, it's hard to tell like the actual value of things and how they're valued by people, because there's some outside input that's not organic and not like a giant system like the government or something like that. So
let's say that we went to the supermarket and the government gave everybody a voucher for a free package of cheese per month. What would happen? And said every supermarket, you need to accept this voucher.
Well, I'd say the price of cheese would go. I'd say it'd go down because it would have to compete if people want. So I would,
There's one particular kind of cheese that you can get. One block of cheese that weighs, say, you can buy a 5-pound block of cheese.
Yes.
By a particular brand. What will happen to the price of that? And what will happen to the price of other cheeses?
Okay.
And why?
So if there's a voucher for, you're saying the voucher is for a specific type of cheese.
Yeah. We'll call it. We'll just say cheese X. cheese X, a 5-pound voucher. You present this voucher, and then the person is required to take it, and the government
required to take it.
Yeah. Each vendor everywhere. If you don't take these, you're subject to a fine that's way more than what you would either gain or lose by taking it.
Okay.
It's like let's say before the cheese cost $5, $1 a pound or something. I know that's insanely cheap.
Okay.
But let's say the cheese cost $5, and then the government prints all these vouchers and gives them one per person per month to go to the store and buy this $5 thing of cheese under the promise that the government will give $5 to each store owner that cashes in a voucher.
Okay, so then that cheese would be the one that is. So as I understand, I'm making sure I'm clear the premise. So when you say about, so people will be buying the cheese, right? It's not free for them.
No, they will be. They will. They have the voucher that serves as payment for the cheese.
Okay. And the stores are forced to sell this cheese.
And the stores are, if the store has the cheese in stock, it is forced to sell one piece of cheese for one cheese voucher.
Okay.
So what all could go wrong there?
Well, first of all, as I understand it, and the government will give the store a payout, right?
Yes, the government will pay the store $5 per voucher that they send in to the government, or send in as evidence of having collected.
All right, let me think. Okay. Let's see. Well, I think the potential, at least a potential thing I could see, is that the quality of that cheese would stop mattering that much, because essentially, if the stores are being forced to sell them, and if people have a really strong incentive to buy them because it's free, that cheese would like, the manufacturer could cut corners, and like it would just, the quality of the cheese wouldn't matter as much. And I think the other cheeses, like the competition, would have to. I think they would have to compete with the cheese that's basically happening, or that's just so easy to get. I mean, it would really, I think it would hurt the business of people selling cheese that are not within that government protected sphere, because, well, if this cheese is basically free for people with their voucher, what sort of incentive do they have to go out of their way and actually pay for a different cheese that may be even better, and maybe it was originally cheaper, but so I think that would really, it would screw up, like that the price would no longer send about, like, obviously it's free, it would no, like, for the customer, it would no longer send a signal. It really wouldn't. I don't think it would fit into the market with the, the other cheeses, and it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of, and maybe other potential problems too that I'm not seeing, but yeah.
Counterfeiting. Well, counterfeiting one of these vouchers would be an awful lot easier than counterfeiting currency, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah, that's one too. That's a good example. Right, exactly.
So that means that you're going to wind up having more and more and more and more and more of these vouchers coming out, and still the government's going to promise to either redeem them. So either the government's going to find out that they're fake, and it's going to be, well, the onus is going to be on the person whose store it is to recover the loss.
Right.
Or it's going to be on the government to recover the loss, which means that it's actually going to be on the taxpayer to pay more taxes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
to pay for people to get cheese.
Right.
And there's all sorts of unintended consequences that happen even just one step down the line that people aren't going to think about when they think, oh, free cheese for everybody, yay.
Free cheese. Yeah, exactly. I think there's some old adage or something. It's like nothing's not. I don't know if it's an adage. It's
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's like, or nothing's free in life. I've heard that said as well. It's sort of like maybe cliche, but yeah.
Very true.
The price gets saddled on someone, and in this case, probably back to the taxpayers, because there's. I mean, and yeah, I like your point about that. Yeah, you can get more vouchers and then there's more cheese being distributed than it's supposed to be, or than what would have been predicted, and yeah, then there's a whole host of problems. And yeah, and then what happens to those other cheese providers, right? Who would have been their competitors? They really, I mean, kind of maybe an analogous example, possibly. I'm not sure, but say, well, if we're looking at college, right? And how the government, as I understand it, they subsidize higher education.
They subsidize state higher education, and they guarantee the loans of anyone who applies for a government-sponsored loan, and receives it, which actually means that you can declare bankruptcy, but the government will not let you declare bankruptcy on student loan debt due to the fact that they have their interest tied up in it too.
Ah, I see. So
there's some of the salient facts for you. Now, do what you're gonna do.
So, do they do the same for like trade school?
I'm not entirely familiar with that. I know that there are certain loans that you get for higher education, and in institutions of higher learning, you can get government-backed loans. So, as long as it's framed that way, yes. But then there are some trade schools.
Can you say what you just said? You cut out.
Oh, yes. In essence, yes, you can do that for trade schools as well. But it's a little bit different due to the fact that an awful lot of trade schools take place at community colleges, and they are in and of themselves a whole lot cheaper, to the point where people generally don't need to leverage too much in order to be able to pay for their education in the first place.
Right.
And ultimately, if things do continue the way that they're going, then people are going to get leveraged even to get into trade school, and the prices are going to go up to reflect the government guarantee, just as they have everywhere else. The value or the cost to value ratio keeps on going up, or in other words, the value to cost ratio keeps on going down. Right.
Exactly. Right. And yeah. And that will, and then you get a huge influx of like students, right? Or you get more people going because they're able to, and you screwing up like the organic process that economics and what would present. So like say school is a certain price and the government will not subsidize you, and say in a perfect world it's merit based and stuff like that. You're only going to get a few people matriculating to higher education, not a few people, but you're going to get as many as would benefit, and as many as would the value will be more, the cost and value will be more congruent with each other. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, a big problem is that the colleges have already built up to accommodate this large amount of students, and they're using that like money and stuff to get bigger and bigger facilities. So say if the government stops subsidizing it, like basically colleges would have a bunch of empty and wasted space, and like I think that would cause a whole bunch of problems, and they would kind of crash and burn a bit. I know, for example, my school, we had so I go to Mizzou. We had a problem a few years back with an administrator who was just really bad. He was the president of the system, of the MU system. And he had some he tried to pull funding from grad students, and reallocated and stuff like that. I don't know the particulars. He was just like kind of a dick. My parents complained about him on end because they work in the MU system. And he hired his cronies, and they got in, and so all the way down the line, he affected basically all the colleges. Administrators everywhere were associated with him, and of course they didn't want to speak out against him or do anything to him because, well, their interests are tied up in it as well. And yeah, he eventually got ousted, and then enrollment went way down. Enrollment dropped hugely, because we were having problems, and there were some racial issues too. It was a whole thing. And yeah, so enrollment dropped a lot, and they had all these empty dorms, and all this, and they struggled financially quite a bit because of what they were expecting. So in the same way, if you pull the government plug, you're gonna have the problem. It's kind of, I don't know if this is an apt, but support, right? It's like life support when someone didn't need it at first, and then they slowly become kind of attached to this this thing, and so they can't subsist without it, but they didn't need it at first. So you want them to revert back to this original state where, okay, well, they don't need life support. They're they can be autonomous and things and stuff. But pulling the plug will do damage, and so it's really this situation that's less than optimal. And I don't even think the government is planning to pull the plug and stuff like that. And oh god, I have a lot to say about college and problems with it. Because,
have at it.
All right, yeah. So
while you're doing that, I'm going to get myself a little something to drink.
Okay, cool. So one of my issues with higher ed is that, so it's this push towards holistic admissions, read arbitrary, and affirmative action in a purely racial sense. And each college wants to uphold their reputation by having a certain percentage of X minority, right? And the problem with that is X minority may not be inherently disadvantaged, and X majority might not be inherently advantaged, depending on their circumstances. So I have an example. I have two examples. One, in my town, there is this. So there's some people who I'm obviously not going to name names, who were of a disadvantaged minority type. If you're looking at a broad sense, a statistical sense, their minority is not doing as well. But this particular person these particular people, I should say, were, the progeny of faculty and university professors, and they were wealthy and, educated, and they could travel and all this stuff, very, cultured, etc., not very disadvantaged. And in fact, they got into really good colleges that their, ACT scores, GPA, stuff like that would not, it wouldn't, it's just not warranted, essentially. They went to schools above their level. And they also got, nice scholarships and stuff, and it was cheap for them. And I have another friend, he lives in the Bronx, and his family is not that wealthy, but he's Asian, right? So he is selected against for college admissions. And I have, so Matt, I was just saying so I'll just re-say some of what I said. I have two cases of people where this affirmative action idea just falls apart when it's not I can kind of get behind economical. So if someone's really disadvantaged monetarily, and so they have nice SAT scores or ACT scores and good GPA, and they have maybe good activities, but like
I'll freaking give them. I'll freaking help with a scholarship for those people.
Right. But when they treat it from a racial place, so when they treat it from this broad statistical sense, instead of treating people as an individual, for example, when colleges are trying to uphold they want a certain percentage of the minority, X minority, right? They don't really care if the person they're recruiting is actually disadvantaged or not. So I live in a college town, and so there's just faculty from all over. And so we have some minorities that as a whole are maybe disadvantaged. If you looked at them from a broad, like, population-based statistical approach, yes, they less advantaged, having more difficulties. But these people in particular are the progeny of faculty, and they're intelligent, cultured, wealthy, all of these things, and they're still getting special treatment by colleges, even just because the color of their skin, and they already have the advantages that apparently that color is supposed to include, and so they get into colleges above their level, essentially above their head, above their ACT scores and all this stuff, and I have a friend, again, I said this, but I'm saying it again for Matt, who's from the Bronx, and he's Asian, but they're not wealthy. His family's not wealthy, and essentially he is going to get selected against because he's an overrepresented minority in college. And I think
is he Asian of some sort?
Yeah, he's Asian.
Okay.
And
some schools in the Bronx have insanely high scores.
Right. And his family is not well off, and he will get selected against, and yeah. So, and I almost think like the thing they use to like justify it is these extracurriculars, these pretty arbitrary like school things, like if you were in school government and all this stuff and participated, and all these things that should be weighted less.
Things that essentially necessitate money. Like, if you were doing all these things instead of having a part-time job after school, or if you were doing all these things that cause your parents to have to pay extra. Exactly.
And also are potentially just arbitrary and meaningless. I know I joined extracurriculars in my school for, like, I would quit them because it was just a huge waste of time. No one was doing anything. I wasn't learning anything. Nothing happening. But people still get that nice blip on their resume. Oh, I did this. He did X, and so and so someone can participate in a ton of clubs and actually not get anything done, and it inflates their resume. And then it's like almost in some places it's like they look at that stuff in the same way they look at like SAT or ACT and GPA. And I understand maybe really prestigious schools, you need other things to set people apart, but I think the extracurricular should still be merit based. So people who won math competitions, and in fact, from what I've heard, like Asian people are selected against. So people who are good violinists, pianists, math and like that sort of thing, that doesn't they don't stand out as much among their minority but if you compare them to the general populace, like the things they're doing are quite impressive, but because these are activities associated with a specific minority, they get selected against because that minority is overrepresented. Like, if that's even a thing. I think the representation was just simply indicative of who was objectively able to meet the criteria and beat out other people, not off of comparing each person into their population and stuff like that. It's just
well, of course. And one thing to do would be to make the SAT and the ACT harder.
Yeah, and that's how it used to be, but people were getting discriminated against, apparently.
I can't stand the fact that I got a low SAT score, even though my mommy told me I was smart all the time when I was growing up. I'm gonna get all buttered and sad about it instead of studying in order to get a better score.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And And yeah, so they lower the ceiling on these tests, and that makes people blend in as well. And in fact, they don't even pay attention to the age you took the test as well. So, say for this, like the SET studies, there's kids who get like 35s when they're like 12. There's a few kids, like not that many per year, maybe like less than 10. But these kids still,
they should be able to. That should count for something.
That should definitely count for something. It's crazy. In fact, an insane score for their age. And they should factor in age and stuff like that as well with these tests. I think that would give a little bit more, like, send more of a signal of the student. But instead they just lower the ceilings, don't really care about that stuff, and focus on these arbitrary extracurriculars. Like, oh, if someone, and they even in the Ivy Leagues, which makes sense for them, I suppose, because they want more money. They select like more unique sports, like water polo or actual polo, or like these sports that basically like are kind of just wealthy people participate in them, are seen as more unique than, say, soccer and stuff. Like, so even among these arbitrary like criteria, there's like selection against like the economically disadvantaged. And that's what, if affirmative action is to be a thing, they should focus on purely economics, like, and standing, like like that sort of thing with the parent. Like, did this kid have to work a job, and like how would that affect their academic stuff like that? Instead of race, it's predicated on race right now. And I'm seeing people who are not qualified just ride the wave, and I'm seeing people who are qualified but underprivileged, but they're the wrong race because they're Asian, getting selected against just because like it's racist in itself doing these things. And you should treat each student as an individual, not really a statistic. And yeah, but of course doesn't appear to be politically correct, because certain people will get in more than up it. But like, Asians are going to be everywhere. Like, the Ivy Leagues would be full of Asians.
But that couldn't possibly have anything to do with the fact that they actually have a healthy home culture.
Right, yeah.
Where people are actually, like, encouraged to do well at school, and things like doing surgery or being an engineer are revered in terms of societal expectations, as opposed to everyone wanting to be a football player or a movie star or all these other different things that don't actually provide value to anybody.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and so oh well, Asians are getting in. Their culture is beneficial towards academic.
I love their home culture, as long as it doesn't go completely over the top in that direction.
Right, as long as it's not too competitive.
Well, yeah, or as long as it can be as competitive as you like, but as long as it's not unhealthy for the kid. Yeah,
as long as it's not unhealthy for the kid.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, that sort of thing is amazing. And in fact, the people that I got along with best in graduate school were all from Asian backgrounds. There were very few people of any other race that I really, really got along well with. And the fact is, I didn't particularly care for the color of their skin or the color of their hair or the shape of their eyes or whatever. That had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with the character and the values that they grew up with.
Exactly. And essentially, you're doing this great home culture a disservice by basically selecting against it. You're like, oh, they're too it's
poppy chopping.
It's Harrison Bergeron again, right? Like, if someone has an advantage, let's mitigate it. And if someone has, but like an advantage is an advantage for a reason. It's not like they were inherently given this advantage. This is a cultivated thing, and this is something the parents work for, and this is something the kids have to work with as well. So to exclude these people is it's silly. It's pretty silly, and it really does does a huge disservice to them and their families.
Oh, certainly. It's
And the thing about being well-rounded is, like, first of all, it's always arbitrary. I think it's much more impressive if someone has 5 clubs they're in, but if one person has one thing they do and they're extremely good at it, like at the national level they're competing, that's more impressive than 5 arbitrary clubs. And in the real world, well-roundedness is not exactly like, people are a lot of times specialists. Like, which doctors get paid more? The specialists, the people who are really good at what.
And even so, even if you are good at a specialty, that shows that you have the underlying characteristics that it takes to go and get good at something else if you need to.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. You don't need to just.
You're someone who's good at math and science doesn't mean they're only going to be good at math and science. It means that's what they directed their attention toward. If they decide, okay, I'm going to go and put the same amount of hours, the same amount of effort, and the same amount of concerted willpower into pursuing something completely different, I'm betting you that person would be equally good, assuming that they had an equivalent set of entry circumstances and an equivalent set of mentors, an equivalent set of books, an equivalent set of equipment, or whatever it might be.
Exactly. And that's the thing is I guess well-roundedness is, on the surface, it's easier to see because you can see where they're like. You're like, well, they're good at all these things, and I can see it because they're doing all of them. But someone could be great at one thing, and you can't necessarily tell if they'd be good at the other. You can see that they're great at this one thing, and they probably would be, just because there's the general factor. They'll be good at other things as well, but they decided to focus there, and specializing is good. Like, that's like it in society. It's good if everyone specializes in their niche and then does that to their best ability. You're not having everyone stretching themselves thin, doing everything and doing a little bit of everything. That's not that efficient. You want people to be fitting in their role and completing it really well. I don't need my doctor to be able to build my house. That's just not that important. I don't need my I don't need my plumber to be my orthodontist.
But your plumber might be your proctologist, though.
Yes.
Or maybe your proctologist might be your plumber. I don't know.
Yes. There you go. Exactly. And when there is crossover, usually it's there for a reason. When there's, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, specializing is good. It's a good thing. Like, with the modern progression of society, or just with the progression of society, you see more and more specializing because less people are having to, it's like, well, I was just having, maybe say a long time ago, I was just having to be farming and, subsisting and basically just taking care of myself, and a lot of time would be spent doing that. But instead, I can go to the grocery store, and I can, pick up these things that, this farmer cultivated it, these people delivered it, etc., etc. And it streamlines the whole process, and that's good. But instead, there's this selection against specialization for some inane reason.
Well, it's not necessarily a selection against specialization. It's mostly the fact that a lot of things just aren't impressive.
Right.
I mean, if there's so many different things that people can be doing, that like being on a soccer team doesn't say too much about yourself, because if you're on a soccer team or you're on a football team,
well, I mean specializing and doing well.
Yeah, but even so, if you're a bench rider on the national or the state championship football team.
Oh yeah.
What does that say? I mean, there's only 11 people per team on the field at any given time, and there's more than, say, about 33, 35 players on a team usually. Unless you're in a really small school, in which case you wind up having people doing multiple things, some on defense, some on offense, some on special teams, and so on. But you can usually count on there being 40 or less people that play in any given game, unless you're bringing in second and third stringers if you're crazy far ahead or whatever, or people get injured. And even so, the execution of your role, it's an awful lot easier to tell if someone is shirking. If he does an individual sport, like let's say someone does individual running or individual rowing or rock climbing, or just insert any individual sport here, especially one that kind of pushes you to the limits of your physical capability and might even be mentally strenuous too. Something that might be a little dangerous. Like bouldering, for example. Rock climbing with no harness, and they have competitions. They have world competitions for these sorts of things, and the people that are doing it are really, really good. And there's an objective measure. It's you hit the button. Question number 1: do you make it to the top of nearly impossible course? Question number 2: how long did it take you?
How fast? Yep. Exactly.
You can't argue against that. That's a number. That's a binary. Whereas, if you're 1 out of 11, and which means that you're 1 out of 22 ultimately, because it's how good of people were you playing against? Were you playing against a bunch of losers?
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I mean, being the winner in and not having any competition isn't satisfying either. And especially if you wind up having a culture that glorifies mediocrity, and most people just want to get the maximum result with a minimum effort. Being part of playing team sports is likely not going to get you anywhere unless, of course, you're like the captain of a team, captain of a winning team, and you are.
Or if you're All-American or All-State.
Yeah, All-State, captain of a team, All-American, or and you're applying to, say, military academy.
Right.
Where the whole point is leading other men.
Exactly. Where being in a group matters and how you work.
And you're going to the academy, so you're going there to be an officer, you're going there to be a leader, and you've already demonstrated that you can lead. But then the leadership role in and of itself is much more important than the actual winning or the losing, because ultimately you're going to be adopting the strategies of whatever military academy goes and throws down your throat.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's mostly an attitude thing that they test. But for every one leader in a team, like you might have an offensive leader, an offense captain, you might have a defense captain, a special teams captain, or you could just have a team captain and don't even have them be play in all the different places. But then again, the selection of the team captain is oftentimes arbitrary. Oftentimes the coach's son. So how in the world are you supposed to make those kinds of determinations? Individual sports are way better than team sports in that regard. But if people prioritize the whole, I want to be part of a team, I want to be part of something bigger than myself, and I don't want to be individually responsible for the result, well then don't be surprised if that one particular extracurricular doesn't hold all that much weight. If all it does is ever make you the same as anybody else. Like, for example, water polo. Let's take water polo for example. Now, I don't play water polo, but there's leagues, and they're insanely cheap to get into all around Finland. And then people have competitions. In fact, I believe it was last year's Finnish championships were held about a mile and a half away from my house. And then some subset of European championships were played there. I'd sit there with a cup of coffee after going and doing my own workout, and I'd watch them play water polo. And it was good, but still, you could see while watching the whole field who was field court, whatever you call that, the part. Well, you got the goals, the thing outlined by buoys. And you could see, Well, it wasn't the whole pool. It was just that one little spot in the pool. But anyhow, you could see all the people there swimming back and forth and throwing the ball and trying to get goals and so on. And even amongst the winning teams, even amongst the really good teams, there were still people that you could have almost taken out of the water and had the result be the same.
Yep.
It's like if you were to take the top two teams. And throw out the bottom half of the players on both of the teams and make a team out of one of them, they would completely destroy any other team with no practice, or with say give them about 20 minutes to get to know each other and get to come up with a strategy, and they would just completely steamroll any other team that came.
And that points back to even in not an athletic sense, and then not like a traditional sports sense. There's academic like team competition, like say Scholar Bowl, or say yes. No, I went to one of those practices, and I was like, oh, screw this. So Scholar Bowl, robotics, any of these team like academic sports, you can just free ride your way. And if you have smart people or good, like you could in robotics, you could potentially have one really good person probably who could just program and build, and they can design everything by themselves and do basically everything.
And do the whole thing that everyone else is just there. I won a robotics competition.
We are.
I'm smart. I won a robotics competition.
I'm gonna be an engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you just stay away from my self-driving car, please. Just don't touch it. Don't have anything to do with it.
Well, apparently they'd be pretty good. They'd be pretty good at riding in it, but
that'd be about it. Oh boy, terrible.
Oh yeah, but yeah. So exactly these and still. So yeah, you should look. They should focus on objective and individual running, swimming, golf, things like that. Things that are individual and very objective, and that's why they should, that's why test scores should be focused on above GPA, because GPA grade inflation. Certain schools grade inflate more than others. Certain people take easy classes. For example, my school did not even weight GPA. There was no weighted GPA. Mm-hmm. So a person could take PE and art, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they would get the same GPA as someone taking, the AP, an AP track. And it just gave no incentives. Like at the beginning of high school, I was like, oh, I'm gonna try to get a 4.0, and then I realized grades aren't weighted, nothing. Like we have 10 valedictorians. 10 valedictorians? That doesn't make any sense. And so I was like, oh, screw that. I don't care. Like I'm not gonna care about those measures.
Well, and of course, someone who actually isn't going to care if they're going to wind up getting an equivalent trophy at the end as to somebody that isn't going to be anywhere near as competent.
Right. Exactly. It just doesn't matter.
It's the equivalent of a participation trophy. I mean, you can go ahead and say that we have winners, but are they really winners if you go and you lower the standard that low?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's so, doesn't make any sense to have multiple valedictorians. Like, come on. That's just silly. And yeah, I was like, and that, I mean, I'm kind of naturally a person who kind of takes the easy route. Like that's just my natural tendency, and not a necessarily good one, but it's just how I am. So when I saw that my energy put into getting good grades would not really come with an equivalent outcome, or would not be worthwhile. I was just like, well, I'm not going to do it. So you're actually demotivating people who maybe would want to, run in the race and try to win and try to get the top GPA. You're sort of like, okay, like what your accomplishments wouldn't matter if you did that. So why do it? And try to, maybe try to stand out some other way. And so, yeah, so colleges should definitely focus on something like objective, like a test score that everyone took above GPA. There's so much grade inflation and so much crap, and even teacher recommendations are kind of specious, because it could just be someone you like, it could be someone you're related to, it could be someone you know from your family, and it's a whole bunch of, and I know they have to get, it's not easy, but they should really still weight the objective measures much more highly than they do, and it just, yeah, and with that culture of everyone wins and everyone gets, it breeds really deleterious traits. It breeds entitlement is the first thing that comes to mind. In my honors, so I'm in the honors college of not anymore, but I was in the honors college of my college, and like for example, the first chemistry exam, he asked so I got like a low A on it. I was like, okay, it's fine. He asked a hard question at the end, and the problems I missed were not. I got this nice. It was a nice conceptual question that had to do with do you really understand the formulas that are happening, and it had I can't remember exactly what it was. It had something to do with light and photon emission and stuff like that. But yeah, so it was a difficult question. It wasn't just. I wouldn't say it's difficult. It's a conceptual question. If you understood the concept, it was not that hard at all. If you didn't, and you're just a row memorizer, yeah, you would be clueless. You'd be clueless, and it wasn't a question that you were seeing on the homework.
Was it one of those basically explain this like I'm a reasonably intelligent 15-year-old? Just explain the scenario to me, kind of a thing, or was it?
There was a part of the question that had to do. They're like, well, why is this the case? It had a nice graph, and it was like interpret. It wanted you to interpret what was going on, and they're like, all right, well, so what part of the graph is, it asked what the y-intercept was, and it was like negative v sub 0. I think that was what it was. I'll have to try to find the test, but yeah. So I was like, I looked at it, I was like, all right, let me look at the graph. I was like,
what happens when we set x to 0? Oh, which is
I answered it like an idiot. Like I didn't really like. I conceptually, I answered it, and then I conceptually justified my answer. But I was just like, well, y-intercept right there, I think that would mean this. And I got the question right, and majority of people got it wrong. And the question I missed on the beginning was we had a bunch of scientists to memorize basically, like what they did, which is, I'm fine with that. It's important to know what scientists did what and stuff like that. I think
it is important, and I'm not particularly good at it.
Nah, I wasn't good. I missed two. I was like, I forgot who. So I missed those, and then there was one that was like you ordering the colors by their wavelength, right? And there was 4 colors, and I just listed 3 of them because I just forgot the other. Like I didn't. It was just me being ADD. So I made some ADD mistakes.
Okay, so basically you had to do raw G Bev, and then you didn't remember raw.
Yeah. They listed 4 colors for us to order, and I only ordered 3 of them. Like I just.
I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
And then I was talking to people about the answers. I was like, all right, so did you get this order for the colors? They're like, there were 4 colors. I was like, oh yeah, there were one.
Oops.
Oopsie daisies. But I got the conceptual question right, and I was happy about that. And because I was like, okay, that means I at least have some semblance of an idea of what's going on. And a lot of people missed them, and all they did, instead of saying, hey, maybe we should have tried to understand instead of just rote memorize, is they just threw cognitive dissonance, throw poo. They just threw poo at the professor. They were like, that question was way too hard.
It's not fair. It's not fair. You're giving that question to us. We didn't study it. It wasn't a homework problem.
We weren't prepared for that one. Exactly. And it's this entitlement, because they're used to winning.
Did you pay attention during class? Are you competent?
Exactly. So so they just all got pissed. I'm like, this entitlement, it's just like, come on. And I had kids who like some. Well, this is my friend, so it was kind of in jest. But there were some people who weren't my friends who were like, yeah, because I got the problem right. We're like getting like kind of like pissy and like, oh, well, I don't like kind of like just mad at me for getting it right. Okay, I'm sorry. But yeah, so and this entitlement literally precipitates in so many, you can see it socially affecting people there. Like when someone gets it right, they're like, well, it's unfair. They got it right and I didn't. That's not fair because it's not equal. Well, it's like, well, there's more to it than that. And And yeah, so they just threw shit at the professor.
It's like we all have an equal ability to be in class. We all have an equal ability to read the book.
Yeah.
We all can go, even if we don't have the book, we can go to the library and, open the cover and do the problems.
Yeah.
We all have the same homework
Like
assignments.
Google. There's like so many resources.
Google, Khan Academy, call me.
You barely have. You don't really have an excuse. Like, I mean, but besides your own self, like say, okay, well, I didn't put enough work into it. That is an excuse that makes sense.
And
okay,
that's the
well,
only
I didn't do
fair
that well.
excuse.
It's fair, yeah. Okay, well, I didn't do it as well as I should have because I just didn't put enough effort in.
I didn't
That's
visit
why I
my
didn't do that
professor's
well.
office hours. I didn't attend lecture. I didn't study in such a way as would help.
Exactly.
Which
instead
which actually leads me to want to share a little something. I've been putting together some ideas for people that have difficulty studying.
Oh, awesome! That is great for me.
And it has to do with the way one organizes one's material. And it's the fact that, I don't know, was it you that was saying the other day about, no, this was actually my friend who's a music teacher, who was talking about auditory versus visual learning, and what that actually means in practice. And he had this theory, and his theory was that everybody thinks in terms of pictures and diagrams, and at least knows how to function, especially due to just the size of the occipital lobe of the brain.
Okay.
So they know how to function visually. But sometimes it's faster. But it's sometimes faster for them, for certain people who are known as auditory learners, to hear something and construct their own picture in their mind of what's going on.
Right.
And it's rather that ability that makes one an auditory learner as opposed to a visual learner that needs to have the picture given to them to start out with.
Mm-hmm.
So either reading or hearing can sometimes give people the picture in their head, and other people not. So so the best thing
for me.
Mm-hmm.
That explains for me, because I was looking at the diagram, like some diagram of like the different styles, and there was like, it's like a circle, and there was a bunch of different types, and I was like, well, I learn really well by reading, seeing pictures. So I guess I'm an auditory visual. Like I don't learn well by hearing because I suck at like picking up on what people say. ADD, it like goes through one ear out the other. I struggle to focus on what people are speaking with. But when I read it, I do really well. And see it as well, of course. But yeah, so keep going. I was just
if you don't mind me calling BS on that, because you are able to take me to task and remember, sentences or words out of things that I've said weeks ago that I barely remember.
Oh, well.
So I would say that's selective listening.
Yeah, it is selective. It's definitely selective. And yeah, so that's true. I do remember what is like what piques my mind. Like, I don't know. I have some organization, and I'm good at like remembering when, like, if someone said something or what, if not, like and my dad is the same way. He was like, yeah, like I would remember what people said and like, how they said it and stuff like that. So I guess it might be selective. But if it's something that's like doesn't pique my interest, and I don't value as much, shoots through my head, and yeah. But yeah, continue.
So my recommendation is going by the old surgeon's adage: learn one, do one, and teach one. And I know that sounds incredibly simplistic. And I would say it's simple, but not simplistic, because the process of actually learning one, of actually doing one, and of actually teaching one is very involved.
Mm-hmm.
How do you learn one? It involves some amount of being able to synthesize what it was that you processed. So if you
Right.
go and you read something, and I'm just going to go and crack open a page of let's see. Well, here we got mathematical methods in the physical sciences,
Okay.
or physical chemistry. I'll crack open physical chemistry 8th edition, and we're going to go to some page. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around. All right. I need to get something that's a little more conceptual so that we can. So that we can work with it and it won't. Oh boy, here we are, nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy.
Okay.
Okay. So, there's point E, equivalent nuclei. Well, I guess the first question is, well, equivalent would mean having the same value, and nuclei would be like the nucleus of an atom.
All right.
So then you read paragraph 1, and it says a group of nuclei are chemically equivalent if they're related by a symmetry operation of the molecule and have the same chemical shifts. And for a little bit of context, chemical shift means that a particular drawing will a drawing of an NMR spectrum of the molecule shows a peak showing up at a particular x coordinate. So basically, if you have peaks with the same x coordinate, they're going to be chemically equivalent to each other.
Right.
They would be regarded as equivalent according to ordinary chemical criteria. They are magnetically equivalent if as well as being chemically equivalent, they also have identical spin-spin interactions with any other magnetic nuclei in the molecule. So that also means that
They bond similarly.
it means that there is symmetry not only in the chemical nature of things, but in the chemical nature to the things they're bonded to the things they're bonded to, and to the things they're bonded to until you go through the entire molecule.
Right.
Right. So that is the concept of equivalent nuclei, and that is one paragraph. Now we close the document, and we say, okay, how do I explain it? I can write it down if that works for me.
Right. You can draw the graph with the peaks.
I could draw the graph with the peaks, although I didn't have the graph right there in front of me, so I would have liked to have seen that if I was going to do that. Or I can sit here and explain the topic to a friend. So I can go and I say, okay, two nuclei, there's two ways of determining whether a nucleus is equivalent. One is chemically, and the other is magnetically. Now, if something is magnetically equivalent, it will be chemically equivalent because it means that all the bonds associated with it are the same. Now, if it's chemically equivalent, that means that all of the bonds closely associated with it are the same, and all the relevant big molecules or all the relevant big atoms next to it are the same. But that might not necessarily be magnetically equivalent because the stuff further down the line might be different.
Oh, okay. Cool.
All right. So I just explained the topic to you using my own words.
Right.
That
reinforces your understanding.
Mm-hmm. And that is the learning one and the doing one. And the way one would do that is taking that knowledge and then going and looking at molecules, like molecule structures written in a book or in a paper or in your own lab, and finding things that are chemically and magnetically equivalent to each other. And the teaching would be partially me doing like what I'm explaining that subject to you right now.
Right,
Whether or not you actually need to learn it is another thing. Like even if you already know it, you can play the role of a semi-intelligent 15-year-old for me to go and explain this stuff to, and you can even ask me questions about it, and that forces me to think. And then I can give you more things to do. Like go and read this paper about NMR spectroscopy, and tell me what you think about the new molecule that they found. And then you can go and collect all sorts of different things that we talked about from all different aspects of our NMR lesson. And I've gone and transformed myself from the student into the teacher. And that transformation from student into teacher is what prepares you to be able to do very, very well on your exams, as well as to be able to do very, very well in real life.
Right. Yeah, it does just very, very well in learning in general.
All right, so what's the difference in between chemical and magnetic equivalence of a nucleus?
Well, chemical equivalence doesn't necessarily necessitate magnetic equivalence, but magnetic equivalence would indicate chemical equivalence. So yeah, that's probably how I would pitch it, just relating them together.
Okay, good. So you, out of not having read the text at all, and
I have no introduction to any of
it, with no introduction whatsoever, and only having listened, seeing as you aren't good at listening to something and telling, you were able to some extent, I would say that most of the information wasn't lost in translation, in repetition, and in teaching. I would say that you caught that, and if you would have actually gotten the context and read more than one stinking paragraph, you might have an idea about NMR. I don't know. Do you? I mean, I'm guessing you might know the principles of NMR. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. Don't really know much about it.
Okay, well we can talk about this some other time.
Sure.
But
all right, cool.
But that's but I just picked a random paragraph that was somewhat conceptual in nature to show how I'd go about learning and teaching it. Now, if you had an entire, 500 some pages of context, it would have been even easier. But most people are just going to go and, let their eyes glaze over and pretend to read that and not have any clue what's going on and not be able to actually reformulate and resynthesize what each paragraph says.
You need to read with intent, like really. Try to understand what everything. And if you don't understand a certain sentence, just read more and see if further context. Okay, now I get what that means.
Yep.
Etc.
But always go back after every paragraph and check to see if you
understand,
can synthesize it yourself. Check, see, shut the book. Write it down. Take a video of yourself. Explain to somebody else, whatever it might be, and then compare whatever you wrote or explained to what the book said.
Yep.
And if it wasn't equivalent, then that means you didn't understand it, and you can maybe read further to get more understanding and try to go back.
Yep.
And don't go forward until you understand the stuff. And, if you have questions, then you bring those to lecture or to your professor's office hours or whatever.
Yep. Yes. Or Google, or random people, a classmate who understands it. There's so many resources.
Khan Academy. You can go search keywords and go to Khan Academy. You can find all sorts of stuff there, where Sal Khan or one of his friends or one of his people that he's gotten to do videos will just go and have a nice, 3 to 20 minute presentation on one little subject.
Exactly.
I mean, it's totally. If you don't know how to learn, that's one thing. But if you do know how to learn and you haven't learned something, that's totally your fault that you haven't.
Yeah, it's completely. Yes, exactly. And the problem in school is that there's very little, and especially like high school, there was just very little conceptual rigor. They didn't really they focused on very kind of pedantic and less important things about the concepts, or maybe they'd focus on quite just evident things that self-contained things within the definition of the concept. If you know the definition of the concept, you'll know this about it because that's the definition. but they weren't focusing on how things interacted, the effects, etc. Synthesizing knowledge was not important. It was more, as Kant would say, like analytical type knowledge, right? Analytical, like just in self-contained, and there's this tendency that, like, there's this tendency, which I think could just literally it could be ubiquitous, but they say, oh, well, smart people have these knowledge webs, and it's because they're synthesizing information. It's because they're trying to synthesize the information into other things. They're not just looking at it as it is and being lazy and going and stopping there. Like, they want to know more and how it connects to other ideas, and like understand it, not only it by itself, but also understand the effects of it and how it relates to other things. And that really strengthens your conceptual understanding of concepts. But yeah, in school they just focus on, or generally, I mean, I can't make any broad sweeping generalizations, but a lot of the time it's just, okay, oh, well, this is how it is. Just, learn to regurgitate it. These are the types of questions that'll be on the test. Here's your study guide. Like, is that learning? No. I learned nothing in biology in high school. I took biology 2 and I took AP bio. I learned nothing. I learned how to look at the study guide the hour before the exam and read it. Oh, I can use my short-term memory and just regurgitate it like a penguin to its young. And I got like hundreds on all the tests. And I didn't know shit. I didn't know shit about bio. I wasn't going to take the AP test. I was like, well, I can't do anything. And we got a study guide that was basically just the test. And it was like, the test would be like 50 to 100 questions, but it's just memorization. And that's what people do. And yeah, and I think one of the driving factors behind that would be grade inflation, because there's pressure for teachers to, I don't know where the pressure comes from. I know where it comes from in like university, because student ratings can sometimes affect how a professor is, like, their actual job. But in high school, grade inflation might just be like a teacher trying to, like, avoid conflict and avoid it'd be such a pain to have this kid just on my ass talking about, raise my grade, please. So I don't know, but like, grade inflation like leads to this study guide culture, I guess I'd call it, and like just memorize the answers before the test and take it, and you can do it. And it's awful. It's really awful. And it doesn't equate to actual learning. So yeah, that's
but the people that the people
who do
that
the
get
best
by doing the whole memorizing thing will flip out and lose their cool if all of a sudden the rules change.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And the people that think and the people that actually think that that's called learning are the ones that are done the biggest disservice.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're not learning how to learn. And that they can. It's not that they're not capable, it's that they've chosen the path of least resistance for them, and they've just stuck to it. And that's how, that's the status quo for them, and that's how they think, the world is going to be, and school is. And unfortunately, school kind of like upholds this appearance. And it's like, yeah, I can understand why they would think that, because that's how it is. And, there's always adults, oh, that's not how the real world. But you got to see it to believe it. So, you have students who just, as I said, and once you get to college, this has been happening for a long time for these students. So once you get to college, and maybe that one conceptual question I was talking about, once that comes along, they flip out. It's just, they flip their shit and they get mad at the professor, instead of trying to correct themselves and improve. And unfortunately, and that's one of the reasons I dropped pre-med. It was full of students like that. I mean, it was just full.
Memorize Merck's manual, and you won't have any problems.
Right, and especially like, it was not as much chemistry students. Biology students and would just just do it on end. And it sucks because I don't think they actually learn. Like these biology because you have a lot. If you're gonna memorize that stuff, you do have a lot to memorize. And the thing is, like, it's gonna like they're never gonna have that full understanding. And how are they gonna how are you gonna make a contribution if you just have the definition of something memorized and you don't really understand it? Like, what original work are you gonna produce? Well, the answer is you're not gonna produce original work. You're probably just gonna be kind of a lab rat and maybe be directed around, or you'll just be just go be some type of doctor, and maybe not even a good probably not a very good doctor, because you can't actually like synthesize information and come up with creative solutions. You'll just let me look in my manual. If that's that, and then like you see like down the line like lives being like from doctors that just don't have a deep understanding of concepts. You see like lives potentially being threatened. So it's like a bigger deal than just they don't understand things. Like it does matter in your career.
Yeah. But then ultimately, if you do follow the procedures, no insurance company and no lawsuits are going to go. And you're not going to lose a lawsuit if you stick to the book.
Yay!
But
great.
But at the same time, you're not going to be the guy I want to go to. I would rather die on the table having an experimental treatment than die 2 months later knowing that was going to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I'd rather have an experimental treatment kill me. I'd rather have an experimental surgery kill me. I'd rather have a pill kill me. I'd rather have attempt at pushing the body of scientific knowledge further, using my own body as a conduit. Therefore, in order to if something is beyond the bounds that medicine can currently solve, to try to solve it.
Right. And this draws back as well. This whole concept of memorizing and synthesizing knowledge. It reminds me specifically of the students. I hate math. I'm not good at math. A student who doesn't want to actually try to conceptualize things and instead wants to memorize. It's hard to do. Yeah, maybe you can get by with biology, intro biology, and maybe you can get by with your your anatomy class. It's kind of forced there. You got to memorize a lot of stuff there. Mm-hmm. But like once you come to more conceptual things that are conceptual in nature, once you get to like maybe a philosophy class or a math class, it's gonna be a lot more difficult. And these students, I hate math. I can't do math. Well, no, it's probably because you've never really tried to do math. You've had this block learning technique that you use for everything, and it doesn't really apply very well to this subject. So you just say you're bad at it.
But then ultimately, people might not have learned how to learn.
Exactly, and that's what. You can't hold it, but you have to try to illuminate the path, or teach a man to fish, and
diagnose the problem and fix it.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
And I think that the fix for this problem is from the very beginning stressing learning for mastery. There is a Quora question that goes, why do most people consider a B to be a bad grade? And then there's this one answer that, holy crap, it's topping the chart out of all the 96 answers that exist.
Awesome.
It says, I subscribe to the following grading scale. F equals fantastic.
Oh my god.
D equals darn tootin'. C equals can do. B equals bad. And A equals awful. Okay, all joking aside, I don't think that most people consider a B to be a bad grade. So I'm pretty sure this question contains the wrong assumption. With that said, I think that a B is a bad grade insofar as it doesn't indicate mastery. I'm a strong proponent of the pass-fail grading scheme under the condition that the past condition is mastery of the subject matter. Do you want a surgeon that only knows 80% of the anatomy of the cranium, cutting your head open? Do you want to jump in a rocket wherein only 80% of the parts work? Do you want a computer program that does 80% of what you want it to do and then crashes the computer? Let's go with computer programming as an example. There are some people who can write code, translation, copy and paste code, that solves the problems, but has no idea of the architecture, why their code is actually very poor quality even though it gets the job done. If I were teaching a computer science course, these people would fail. There are also some people who understand the architecture, know exactly how to write a good program, but make silly mistakes like forgetting a minus sign, a semicolon, a parenthesis. They're theoretically a lot closer to being a more proficient programmer than all the Mr. Copy-Pastes out there, but would fail every bit as much. Aiming for 100% mastery means that whatever the weakness is, the learning process needs to deal with it. It doesn't mean that one imperfect assignment will immediately jeopardize a grade. It means that there is more learning to be done before moving on to the next lesson. How someone could claim to have a B knowledge of computer programming is completely outside my realm of understanding. You either know it, or you don't. And then, a lot of that answer drew a lot of ire because people think that you should be able to get a B. And I think that they might have misunderstood a lot because they think that, okay, you need to take it in a semester or in a quarter or whatever the grading period is. And I firmly believe that people should take as long as it takes them to understand first principles before they go on to anything else. And if that means that at the beginning of school, you spend an additional 6 weeks teaching people how to count that need to learn, and you let the other people go ahead that can do other sorts of things like addition and subtraction to do that. But then you just kind of let that cycle go, but you don't ever force people to move forward until they've become proficient with the previous stuff. You're going to circumvent an awful lot of those problems.
Yep. Exactly.
So circumventing the problems of the educational system by not putting people on a start at time A, end at time B. The bell dictates the stoppage of the material for the day, and you need to keep up, or figure out how to get by having C's for the rest of your life because you don't have the foundation right.
Right.
You need to get that foundation right.
Yeah. Salcon said similarly, I think, about
he did. He did. But a lot of people in the comments section, a couple in particular, were really saying you don't understand what Salcon was saying. And I think that the whole point is that if you're going from the paradigm that says you need to have all the classes last 9 weeks or 12 weeks or 18 weeks or however long people want classes to last, then yeah. You can't go and just say, well, we'll fail somebody and make them take the class over again. You just give people extra time that need it, but you let them get through the material.
Right.
And you just don't let them finish until they pass, but you let them finish when they do.
Right, and that roots back to a problem in the schools is the idea, the lockstep, everyone in lockstep, instead of some ability, not even ability, instead of content mastery based separation. Yeah, because you could have very able people who aren't doing so well that probably need to spend more time. But you might have less able people who are doing quite well and mastering their subjects who should be accelerated because they are, they're putting an effort.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And furthermore, there could be people that are struggling with the high level stuff that once they got the early stuff would just completely zip through it.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, so there's it's a pretty root problem in the way schools are in our current educational paradigm. Like it's pretty ingrained. So that's unfortunate, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be fixed.
But fixing it requires a different way of thinking about things. And seeing as most people, cognitive dissonance, throw poo!
Oh, poo!
It becomes a little bit of a task to do that, and oftentimes that means that you just need to keep your calm and show people a different way outside of the traditional way of doing things that ultimately does have a good result. And if you demonstrate that, hey, this is actually cheaper, this is better, this is more efficient, students wind up becoming much more autonomous and capable at the end. This basically does what an educational system is supposed to do. Then at least you can go and get a sizable minority of people on your side. But changing attitudes, changing societal attitudes toward these sorts of things is quite difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those take time for sure. But once the change happens, the society likely follow suit eventually. Because once they recognize that as the norm, people are great. As you said before, you were talking about some people, specific person, but I won't go to that. Some people are good at. Some people can rationalize, but they can't quite reason. So basically, but once the change happens, people will be able to rationalize it. Even if they couldn't reason initially, they should eventually be able to rationalize. Okay, I can understand now. That makes sense. Because then, what is normal is kind of the heart of their reasoning. Is like, okay, well, this is normal, so that but instead it should be what makes the most sense. Right.
It's safe. It has to do with the social connotations as opposed to the intellectual ones.
Yep. Exactly. And so, but once a change happens, people will rationalize, and it will make more sense. Like, it's just, that's how society progresses, kind of, pretty much. It's, change. Someone recognizes there's something wrong. They'll be a minority at first. They slowly gain traction. Slowly, people higher up who have power and see the reason eventually make changes, and then society, the rest of society follows suit, and and you'll see, you'll see, like, for example, like slavery being abolished, and discriminatory things slowly, getting vetted out of our, of, like, in the U.S., for example, this process, this kind of reoccurring theme of, starts small, eventually gains traction, and as Josh Dainty would probably tie it back into the dialectic, and there's the thesis and the antithesis and the synthesis. He loves the dialectic, but stuff like that. So we can hope and try to push for that change. I think it's definitely an important goal.
What say you to 23 minutes more streaming to bring it up to an even 2 hours, and
sure,
then calling it quits?
It sounds good to me.
All right.
But I'm trying to think. Let's see if I have anything. Cora, I looked in our comments. It's pretty fun. We have one person who said great, and then we have a porn bot.
Yep.
Meet your girl for tonight. Chat out to Maestro. What are you studying, man? I don't even know what that means. Hey, but we got 4 likes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that the whole situation is we were going for quite some time.
Right. So maybe people tuned in, and that's cool.
I mean, I didn't like it. I didn't log into the stream and like it, so that means 2 other people besides you did.
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. No, 3, because there's 4, right?
Oh, you said 3.
Yeah,
oh, lovely.
There's 4 likes.
See, and then there's these guys like this that think they know about NMR resonance and can't do simple arithmetic like counting to 4.
Them.
People
Phonies.
that think that they know what they're doing but can't count to 4. Like they can't even do music. They can't go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You'd be a bad composer, man.
I'd be a bad composer, even worse conductors. Like 1, 2,
Conductor, yeah, that's what I
1,
meant.
2, 3. What comes next? You're like, 4, you moron.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, let me see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else good to cover. I'm looking at. It's funny how we started with Miss America. we always regresses back to some educational systematic problems.
I'm
Pretty
sure.
Let's see.
Well, I mean, there's another one. I can give you a link
Yeah, sure.
that you may or may not appreciate.
I'd love to.
Well, just go to my Quora profile and look at my most recent answer, because if I go and I put it into Discord, it's going to completely ruin the stream layout.
Okay. How can I be proud of myself and not compare myself to skinny girls? Oh my god, I wouldn't recommend that. People find fat unattractive for a reason. Everyone knows that the fat girl on our left is more knows that the girl on our left is more healthy and more fit than the one on our right. Being proud of being a walking heart attack waiting to happen, or being 5 years out of a double knee replacement and getting pushed around in a wheelchair and lay around all day only to get fatter, to get bed sores, and get fungal infections. Oh god, this is so graphic. Between the fat folds is stupid. Instead, I suggest getting whatever problems you have dealt with, preferably the help of someone sane who isn't going to tell you that it's okay to eat yourself to social stigma in an early time. Yes. Yes. There's this huge
Is it the body positivity movement?
body posy. It's like, yeah, you should not mentally shit on yourself because of, okay, so say you're morbidly obese. Yeah, you shouldn't just shit on yourself and feel awful and just I mean, you should not feel happy with where your body is.
You shouldn't be like,
Yay, I'm fat! Yay,
Yeah!
I'm fat!
Whoa!
No. Please, no. I mean, I wound up losing. I'm now 30. I've lost about 35 pounds from where I was last August. Or was it a year ago last August, or some other point. Anyhow, since I decided to lose weight, I've lost 35 pounds, and I still have a good, 15 more if I really want to. If I want to be able to be a really fast runner again, I'll need to lose about another 15 pounds. But I didn't do that because I was like, oh, I love myself as a fat person. As a fat person, my body's so amazing. I mean, that keg is so much better than the six pack.
It shouldn't be body posy. It should be body objectivity.
It's like, this is not good. And I was thinking, I have kids, and that caused me to think, well, I have a family history of insulin sensitivity problems, insulin resistance. I myself was pre-diabetic as a teenager, and I decided, okay, I am going to eat and work out in such a way as to increase my insulin sensitivity, and whatever else happens as a consequence of that happens. Weight loss was a consequence of not having a bunch of insulin in my system all the time. And then also, all the times that I did decide to eat something sweet, I completely blew the mind of my diabetic friends and family, because I would take a sugar test. I would take a sugar test after eating sugar, directly after 20 minutes, 40, 60, 80, 120, all the way up to 3 hours after. Mm-hmm. And my sugar levels didn't go up. because I was that insulin sensitive. I'm now eating twice a day, but before I was eating once a day and sometimes 0 times a day, and doing a lot of fasting, and being in that fasted state causes a tremendous increase in the amount of insulin receptors and your insulin sensitivity, even amongst diabetic people. But
Right.
there's no money in telling people to fast, so you go and you tell people, "Oh, just eat as many carbs as you want and take the insulin." And then you get your kickbacks from all the insulin companies.
Right, and there's no money in saying, "Hey, do this diet, eat less."
Yeah.
There's money in what is it? Oh, what's it called? Neutrogena? No, that's for skin. It's like you see it on TV, and it's like, eat this. We give you food, we give you meals that are healthy. And
Nutrisystem.
Nutrisystem, yeah, not Neutrogena.
Which is basically they give you like 8 or 9 meals a day or something. Not quite that many, maybe 4 or 5 meals a day, and they're like, just eat these all the time, and it's a bunch of carbohydrates that you shove down your face, but in very small amounts.
Right.
But yeah, it's sickening.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's bad, and it's
what
just
you're
money.
doing, and then people are trying to convince you, well, you shouldn't ever be in a fasted state, because that's the same as a starving state, and there couldn't be, like, those are polar opposite states. Starving states, you shut down. A fasting state, you are actually, once you've gotten to the point of using ketone bodies instead of sugar, your brain functions better. Your body functions better, though you might not be as good at short distance athletics. You would have an easier time running a marathon fasted than you would fed, assuming that your energy systems have adopted accordingly.
Right.
I mean, this whole idea of being fat being a good thing is just trying to give validation to people who don't have the self-discipline that it takes to not be fat. I mean, you can even with a bad diet, by simply not eating for a majority of the time, you can lose weight and be reasonably healthy.
Yeah. The body posy thing, and like, I don't know where to draw, like, because some people are just like chubby, they're not necessarily overweight, and I do wonder how the standards are set for like weight and health. Like, is it set like by is it like arbitrary a bit, or is it objective, like, okay, this is like a healthy range and stuff like that?
Well, it sort of both, actually. It's your weight in kilograms divided by your height squared. So basically, it's kilograms per unit surface area, or per unit area of your body. So basically, if you turn yourself into a big square, how many kilograms does that square weigh?
Right.
So that's that's your BMI. And people have gone and found correlations between, okay, if it's above 25, you're at certain risks. But I have a theory that the single best way of knowing how healthy you are is physiologically and biochemically. My 35-pound weight loss is predicated upon wanting to have a certain set of physiological parameters.
Right.
And I still have some belly fat. I do not have too much visceral fat, but I still do have some belly fat on the outside of me. I mean, as I'm certain you're altogether too aware of. But I was able to cut out many inches from my waist and a lot of the visceral fat, and a lot of my face. My face looked way more chubby before my daughter was born than it does now, and it will look a lot more slender here come, about the end of summer, when I've lost another 10 pounds or so. I forgot where I was going with this.
You said physiological marker.
Yeah.
Like, and the weight product, you were trying to get a certain set of internal like markers.
Yeah. The biggest thing I wanted
was like a Bay product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the biggest thing I wanted was to have a low amount of insulin minutes. So basically, like if you take an integral of insulin levels over time throughout the course of a day, I wanted to minimize that number.
Right.
That was the first thing I wanted to minimize. Then I realized that in minimizing that, I would be able to decrease my blood pressure. I would be able to have it basically be equivalent to eating less, eating a more healthy amount of salt. Even if I do consume more, I would be able to pee out more due to the fact that insulin wouldn't be doing the same thing to the adrenal or in conjunction with the adrenal glands that it would otherwise be doing if I had too much of it.
Yep.
It would be allowing there to be more growth hormone in me. It would be allowing to have better insulin sensitivity when I actually did have insulin in my system. On the more rare occasions when I would eat. And then I also decided that fructose is something I really, really, really wanted to have at low levels due to the fact that it's processed differently than glucose even. Like glucose will cause an influx of insulin, but fructose gives you basically every single symptom of drinking except for the actual mental ones. You can get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and a whole bunch of fat deposits due to having fructose. Why do you think that people eat fruit in the autumn? It's because in hunter-gatherer days, the point of eating fruit in the autumn is to make yourself fat, to get over the winter, to have the stores to let you get there to spring.
Right.
And the thing unique to fruit is the fructose. Heck, that's where the word fructose comes from.
From fruit, yeah. Okay, cool.
So in doing that, man, I should probably see if I can pull a before and after picture. Because although I'm not particularly anything to look at right now, compared to what I was, there's a big difference. And compared to what I was as a teenager, there's still a big difference in the opposite direction. But then again, I was working out 3 and 4 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So there's not really any comparison to dad bod at that.
Yeah, that you can't do that sort of thing. You have kids.
But validating somebody's poor dietary and physical activity choices is one of the least caring things you could do for somebody if you want to do something for their self-confidence.
Yeah, it's under the guise.
Yeah, then let them have self-confidence. Be like, okay, we are going to get your daily insulin amount secreted down. We are going to get your daily fructose intake down. We're going to get your daily glucose intake down. We're going to get your daily fat intake up. We're going to get your triglycerides down. And then if you have these numbers and then you show them in a nice, like a bar chart before and after, or a thermometer before and after, and you let the person feel rewarded for doing those things. You give them tangible, ability to reward yourself. Be like, yes, I'm making biochemical and physiological progress. I can be happy with this no matter what I'm seeing on the outside. Eventually, the outside will catch up with what is taking place on the inside.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And it's... Yeah. So no, that's like an amazing approach to weight loss and maintaining health. And much. I mean, I don't even want to compare them, but it's very vastly superior to body posy. Okay. I mean, don't shit on yourself and feel terrible. Just try to change. Just try to change. If you're unhappy, prices send signals. Yes, we've talked about this, but your feelings also, you not liking how you look, that's a signal. That's your emotion saying, hey, we should probably change this. I don't like this part of me. There's a reason I don't like it.
Don't eat 2 gallons of ice cream and then complain about your thyroid.
Yes, exactly. And and some of those tendencies to tendencies as far as like how you feel about your body, some of them are affected by society, but partially where society's expectations come from is deeper. If you look deeper from where society is looking at, you're looking at well, that's coming from health, basically. Like, it's unhealthy to be morbidly obese, it's unhealthy to be very overweight. That's well known and pretty widely accepted, so it becomes a societal expectation or a societal like standard. And what happens is these body positive people's like, it's just society saying it. It doesn't matter. It's what matters is you. It's like, well, there's a reason these sorts of standards are created, like, because it is bad. It's really unhealthy. And people, I mean, you basically, you're like cutting years off your life with, which is not like, who wants to do that? Some people do maybe, but like, God, that's just the worst way to do it. Like, what? Come on, that's really. Like,
and you don't need to rope other people into validating that if you do decide to do it to yourself. If people think you look gross, well, then you don't need to change their minds about it. You're not trying to have sex with them. You're not trying to be married to them. You're not trying to live with them. Like, if you want to surround yourself with a bunch of fatties, then surround yourself with a bunch of fatties and feel good about it. But don't go and try to get everyone else to condone that behavior.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point. It is this like push to let me just look up body positive.
Oh no. Here we go. I will be able to end our stream with this like gigantic infusion of cancerous material. Anything goes.
Body positive on Twitter.
Oh,
okay,
Twitter.
Well, here's the body. So I'm on Twitter. So here's hashtag
Twitter.
This girl is actually skinny and that's fine. Most of these people in the body positive are actually quite fit, actually. Oh, here's one.
Okay, so if most of them are quite fit, then that, oh man, that has to be even harder for the fat people then.
Yeah, because they're joining. It's like, I'm body positive. That's these girls with abs. And then here's one. Still learning to love this body of mine. All this stuff.
So is it basically fishing for compliments kind of a thing?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, it's definitely that.
Oh boy, I'm just gonna stay.
If you were just body positive for yourself, you wouldn't be posting pictures of it. You would take the picture and then you'd look at it and be like, all right, I'm happy with that. By posting pictures,
you're playing passive aggressive little baby games.
Yeah, it's stupid. This person is overweight. And then it's the most overweight people that get the comments. Oh, beautiful. Let's see. Okay, I can't see the replies.
Oh, please no.
Yeah, and a lot of
people say that out of a sense of social obligation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. What you'll see is when a really pretty girl posts a flattering picture of herself, you kind of see passive aggressiveness in the comment section, like, God,
horrible.
I hate you.
It's like you're overly pretty, like the tall person. You're overly tall. Yeah. The smart person, you're too smart. You're overthinking things. People don't like the superlatives on the right-hand edge of the spectrum.
No, they don't.
People just don't, man. That's just not their thing,
And
you gotta chop off the tall poppies. There's no tall poppies. Just chop them off.
Yeah, exactly. It's this. And you see it. Well, you'll see the comments on like really pretty girls when they post. It'll be like, God, I wish I were you. Like like kind of like pathetic
That
comments.
kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Right. Here's a good one. Here's someone lost weight last summer versus this summer. They were 172 last summer. Now they're 145.
That's pretty good.
Like, there you go. Good job. That's where you use body positivity. Yes, it shows effect, or like, and I'm not, maybe we're looking way too much, but still, it's not exactly like, yes, you shouldn't, like, as I said before, you shouldn't just shit on yourself and feel horrible. Instead, just try to change. But don't. If your body is not worth being positive over, you don't need to be positive. Like, positive indicates that something is good and something desirable or enjoyable.
I mean, and I suppose that if say for example, you just got through a big surgery or something and you've been on bed rest for a year and you're a big huge pile of flab, you can be positive that, hey, at least I didn't die from the surgery.
Right.
Now let's get to fixing this whole flab thing.
Yes. And it's just funny seeing like the really fit girls. Been grinding my whole life. # body positive. That's all it is. And yeah, and it's all girls in this. There's no guys.
Yeah, well, that's because I'm positive that your body looks better than mine.
No guys. Yeah, I wouldn't really be posting my phone. Oh my god. Wow. Anyway, I'm done with this hashtag. And it also sometimes it's just an excuse for girls to post themselves like half naked. Oh,
of course.
I found a guy. I think I found a guy. Yeah, I did.
A guy who's doing body positivity.
Yeah.
Is he like El Lardo, or is he?
He's like medium. He's like kind of chubby.
Okay, so
he's holding his crotch. It's really. He's in his underwear. It's really weird.
Okay, so is he like fatter than me? Not as fat as me?
Similarly sized.
Okay.
Similarly sized.
I'm positive that I still have weight left to lose. So.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's actually gay. So never mind. Too
sexy for my.
Oh yeah. It says pride in his bio. So yeah. So the only guy that's doing it, is not a straight guy.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, anyhow, on that lovely note, we have been streaming for about 2 hours.
Yes.
So thank you, Steven, for chilling and having this lovely conversation, and thank you to everyone who was. And always remember.
Oh, someone commented too. They said, Matthew, do you have a schedule for when you will host sessions like this one?
Well,
do we have a schedule?
We haven't come up with one yet, but we will. We will certainly think about it. It's likely going to be a little later in the day, but but because this was just an impromptu.
Right. Okay. Let's stream. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So we can go and decide that off stream, and then come up with a schedule to. Come up with a schedule to post. Certainly, it can't be during the parlor.
Nope.
Unless we decide to do a like a double
cameo.
Yeah, cameo.
But that just includes me showing up to the parlor.
Yeah. Or we could stream the parlor to both channels.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Would that change your CPU? Or?
No, because we could wait until Caleb gets his nice machine, then I can just go and give him my stream key, and then.
So you have Caleb's stream key, so we could have hijacked his channel.
We could have hijacked his stream and had anything goes, no taboo topics, hosted by Caleb Beers, who is conspicuously absent. Hey, maybe we could get his permission and hijack his channel at some point. Hijack with permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Would it be funny if instead of the parlor, we just one of these days we just showed up and we're like, "Hey, Caleb couldn't make it, everyone."
Caleb. The parlor hosted by Caleb Beers. He's not here.
Oh boy.
Can you tell I'm Caleb Beers? I just got a haircut. Yeah.
Hey, you shaved too.
Yeah, shaved. Yeah. Shaved. Yeah. Exactly. I dyed my hair a little bit. Changed. I bought a new house. Plastic surgery. Everything.
The whole shebang. You just completely changed your outlook on life, on everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you to everyone who stuck it out and people who may be viewing this even after it has been streamed.
Yeah.
We will see you next time. Bye.
Yep. Goodbye.